Welcome to Education Update. I'm Rafael P. Roman. Big changes are on the way for middle schools across the United States. For the first time, students in over 40 states will learn from the same standards for math and English, the new Common Core state standards. In this episode, we'll take a look at what can be learned from teachers at 2 middle schools in New York City who have already started working with the Common Core as part of a pilot program here.
Today, we're going to talk about how do we recognize misleading data.
At IS 187 in Manhattan, Aggie Emerald's 6th graders are working on a unit on statistics and probability.
Divided them in half.
But in this math class, it's not just about getting the right answer anymore. It's also about communication, speaking, listening, and sharing ideas.
You know when you have a bunch of things and then something's bigger, and when you find the average, it's way different than it would be if everything were almost exactly the same.
My classes now are a little bit louder because they're talking about math and it's not so teacher directed. Data can be misleading.
Emerald is leading the Common Core pilot here at IS 187, a public school with about 285 middle school students. For today's lesson, Emerald looked at the 6th grade Common Core standard on statistics and probability and used techniques she's learned to design 4 separate, increasingly difficult tasks.
And they know that if they persevere, which is a huge word in the Common Core, if they persevere through doing the mathematics, they know they will come to something good.
Make sense of problems and persevere in solving them is the first of the standards for mathematical practice, which top the Common Core state standards for mathematics and appear at the top of each chapter that follows. They represent the broad skills and expertise that teachers should strive to develop in their students. The content standards contain several key concepts called domains. The middle school domains include the number system, expressions and equations, geometry, and statistics and probability. Ratios and proportional relationships are covered in 6th and 7th grade, and the study of functions starts in 8th grade. The sequences of domains across the grades are called progressions, coherent sets of skills that become more sophisticated with each grade. Phil Darrow helped lead the team that wrote the standards and says middle school math is vitally important.
It is the mathematics you use in real life and on most jobs. Just because it's in a lower grade doesn't mean it's less important.
Emerald's math problems involve things the kids can relate to: sports statistics, grade point averages, and the varying heights of roller coasters at an amusement park. To teach these more rigorous tasks aligned with the Common Core, Emerald has started using something called accountable talk, getting the kids to have conversations with her and each other, which helps reinforce what they're learning.
Why would someone prefer to show one graph over the other? I'll come back for that. You guys have a discussion with yourselves.
I think that they would prefer to show this one because this one's easier to understand.
Emerald also carefully asks assessing and advancing questions to gauge understanding, drive conversation, and push her kids to find the answers on their own.
What did we learn in the last task?
That maybe she used a median.
Why would she use the median?
She wouldn't want them to look at the 32 and 37, so she uses a median because they're the lowest numbers.
How does that relate to the roller coaster task? If I give it to them and if I say it, they're not learning it. You know, I can say it until I'm blue in the face, so they have to have experiences with it, and they have to have discoveries with it, and make mistakes with it, and grow, you know, as mathematicians.
Cynthia Corey is the principal of IS 187.
Right now, they're kind of going through that culture shock with, oh, the teacher's not going to give me the answer right away. It also gives them some independence. And the children in middle school want that independence.
Getting students to a deeper understanding of the math was a key goal of the standards writers. Too often, they say, math standards are too numerous and too broad to teach with any depth. The Common Core standards are designed to be more coherent, more rigorous, and more focused, meaning fewer topics are covered, but in greater depth. That focus is something that IS 187 teacher Viba Mahadio appreciates. She started implementing the Common Core in her 7th grade math class, but is still following the old state standards in some of her other classes.
I, in my 8th grade class, for instance, cover everything from pre-algebra to geometry, graphing parabolas, trigonometry, things that they don't even understand why. And I don't have the time. So I enjoy that the Common Core standards has cut down on a lot of that and picked a few things that we can really understand. This is our 3rd transformation called dilations. You'll learn exactly what it is by doing some group tasks.
Like Emerald, Mahadio is using new methods to create and teach her new, more rigorous tasks. To write today's lesson for her accelerated 7th graders, she looked ahead to the 8th grade Common Core standard for geometry to create a task about dilations.
How can you compare 5 to 10, 9 to 18, 5 to 10? What do you notice?
That they don't.
Rather than tell the kids exactly what a dilation is, she has them come up with methods to figure it out for themselves.
And then we added the prime coordinates to get 72, which was doubled 36, so we knew it did double correctly.
I found another way. When each first segment is measured, the second segment is doubled in centimeters.
I didn't lead everybody there because I think it's very valid to have different methods and for students to be able to defend their answer. We're going for, what do you have in your knowledge bank that we can use to further our knowledge?
But it hasn't necessarily been easy. Preparation for these new, more rigorous math tasks takes a lot of time. Mahadio says at first she wasn't sure she was up to it.
I thought, I don't know. Like, I just don't know if I can do this. You know, like, this just seems so overwhelming. But I realized that it is a better way to go. I truly do believe students need to understand and explain and gather information, and that's a big part of development as a teenager.
Principal Corey agrees this is a better way to go, but also has concerns about making sure implementation is done right.
We keep talking about budget cuts. And with budget cuts, how do we keep implementing and moving forward? Common Core is not going to go away. There's so much good, but how do we do it right? Because when you implement something halfway, it's not going to go.
Sentiments like these are being heard by Common Core specialists across the city, like Flora Iannarelli, who works for the New York City Department of Education.
At first, you sensed a lot of resistance. It sounded like this is the new flavor of the month. Oh, it's a new initiative again. So my challenge was to really have them sit down and look at it and really see, wait, we are doing these things, but we're doing it in a different framework.
One of the schools Iannarelli is working with is Fillmore Academy, a middle school of over 300 students in Brooklyn, New York, where teachers have started working with the Common Core standards for English language arts and literacy. Principal Mary Bosco was eager to get started with the new standards, although she says it was a little overwhelming at first.
When we first rolled this out, you could see the teachers' faces when you're showing them the standards, you're showing them the work samples that go with the standards, and it took a little while for them to really digest, wow, this is a lot, but this is really, really good. And you know what, my kids can do this.
The day is cold and dark and dreary.
Today in Deborah Glauner's 6th grade English class, the students are analyzing poetry. Glauner's goal was to create a rigorous poetry unit using a variety of complex poems.
I wanted to teach them how to really look at a poem and analyze it. And the Common Core standards really help you do that because it makes you think more about the tasks that you're assigning.
The Common Core state standards for English language arts and literacy contain 4 main strands: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. Each section begins with college and career readiness anchor standards, which remain the same across all grades, and tie one-to-one with the content standards. The reading standards place a heavy emphasis on reading complex text, supporting conclusions with evidence, and making inferences.
The vine still clings to the moldering wall, and my thoughts still cling to the moldering text. And those are kind of like comparing his life and how the day is.
Yeah.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old rage should burn and rave at close of day.
Basically talking about like the death, because like rage against the dying of the life. The life could be meaning your life. It could be meaning what you can see until you die.
Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Knowing that, can you reread it from a different way?
Oh, I knew it. I knew he was talking about women.
Was this an easy activity or a hard activity?
It was a little hard because you had to like dig deeper than what the words are saying. You had to read between the lines.
Students must not only read more complex texts, they must read more nonfiction. The standards contain 2 sections for reading, one for literature, the other for informational text, which should account for just over half the reading by 8th grade. John King is the New York State Education Commissioner and a strong supporter of the Common Core. He says the evidence shows that the reading kids have been doing hasn't prepared them for the real world.
Students were arriving as college freshmen or to a new job, and they were quickly handed a ton of nonfiction reading. A history textbook, a science paper, a technical manual in a career. and they were struggling with those nonfiction texts. So it's things like that where the Common Core will really drive better preparation for college and careers.
All of this nonfiction reading and writing isn't expected to be done just in English class. Instead, it should happen in all classes, which is why the standards contain a section on literacy and history and social studies, science, and technical subjects.
All right, this is a persuasive essay.
To teach a writing unit on natural disasters, English teacher Megan Cronin collaborated with a science teacher to select articles and texts. First, students wrote expository essays on the topic. Now, their assignment is to write a persuasive essay on whether the U.S. should provide foreign aid to countries that have experienced a disaster.
We can give some money, but our country should always go first. I think that we should help the other countries because if we help the other countries, then we can make more allies.
The standards writers say that too often students are asked to write personal narratives, a type of writing rarely used in college or on the job. The Common Core suggests that writing in 8th grade be about 35% expository and 35% persuasive.
And for them to have the foundation from middle school of, the persuasive writing and making an argument and backing it up with evidence from text and from other sources, they're going to be ready for high school.
Kids must not only be able to express themselves through writing, but also verbally. This skill is covered in the speaking and listening and language sections of the standards, which call for students to know how to present ideas, use the right language, and cite evidence. For today's 7th grade English class, co-taught by Bridget Cronin and Rosemary Cantelmo, the kids read a magazine article about child marriage in Afghanistan and are now conducting something called a Socratic Seminar, a class discussion that is mostly student-led.
I'm reading here that their gross is only $800 compared to the U.S. $46,000, so that's not really a lot for millions of families to live on.
Just imagine the stress that they're under. They're trying and fighting for every single day. Sometimes when it comes down to that decision, it's the wrong decision, but sometimes that's all that they have.
It definitely challenges the students and prepares them for going on to high school and then going on for college.
They'll be in a situation where they have to interact with people. It's not only going to be them and a book. You go into business and you need to, sit at a meeting. You need to know how to interact with people, how to cite your information.
Principal Bosco says that what she's learned so far about implementing the Common Core is the importance of providing adequate time and professional development to teachers, encouraging collaboration, and starting that process early.
The advice I really give is start rolling them out right away. Dissect them, try to understand them, one standard at a time, because it is a lot.
Now, adopting these Common Core standards isn't going to be cheap, is it?
What I try to say when I'm talking with districts is that it is going to take an investment. It's going to take an investment of financial resources, but more importantly, an investment of time. Teachers really spending time not only looking at the standards, but looking at their writing assignments, their reading assignments, and trying to figure out, are these activities going to help students master the standards? And so really what's needed is not necessarily new dollars, but a redirection of current dollars.
But even current dollars are harder to come by during a time of budget cuts and a weak economy. Still, King says that moving forward with the Common Core is an imperative that will have a lasting impact not only on our kids, but on the future of our nation.
We can't afford to say, well, we'll make sure more kids are college and career ready when the economy is better, because in fact, having kids be college and career ready is a prerequisite for the economy getting better.